Hi everybody, Ann McKittrick here with Nurtured Noggins, and I am just want to say welcome. We're going to talk about babies for a little while. This is our live Q&A, and I'm so happy to be here with you. I've got some good questions to talk about and to answer, and so I just want to encourage you to pop in. I think I can watch the comments, and if you have any questions as I'm talking, please feel free to hop in, and I hope that I'll see them. If you happen to put something in the comments and I miss it, I will contact you through the comments as well and respond to you. Okay. So, anyways, I'm with Nurtured Noggins, as I said, and I just wanted to share with you that Nurtured Noggins is we are committed to helping you understand and appreciate and see your child through a developmental lens, and also to look at yourself and your own responses to your child through a developmental lens. And so understanding yourself and your own development is very much an important part of being a great parent and responding in the best way for your child. So we've got a brand new course right now. It's called the Quick Start Guide for Newborns. Today is actually the last day that this course is available right now. It'll probably be released again a little later, probably in the latter part of the summer, early fall. But anyways, this course is for anybody who is pregnant and gonna have a baby anytime soon. It's to help parents go from feeling really overwhelmed with everything that they need to know about taking care of their baby when they get home from the hospital to feeling a little bit confident about it. You know, it's hard to know until you actually do it what it's gonna be like to feed and burp and soothe and swaddle and all those things, because if you've never been a parent, you've never done those things, and you get to learn with your own baby. But I teach you what to do before you bring them home, and hopefully that will help you. And of course, you can refer to it as you have questions along the way. But I do want to let you know that for every course sold, I do give one away to a mom that is needs the course. And I'm really focusing primarily on teen moms at this point. And so it's kind of a buy one, give one deal right now. And also, before I answer, I've got like 5 or 6 questions to answer today. I do want to give a little bit of a disclaimer and say that I am not a doctor. And so any answers that I give to your questions really need to be taken through a filter of you need to double check and make sure that what I'm saying you can affirm and confirm with your doctor. Every baby is unique, and you are the expert on your own child. I am certainly not the expert on your child because I don't even see your baby, and it's really hard to know unless you actually see a baby what's going on. And so I just like to make sure that you understand that and take it all with a grain of salt. But I do answer my questions, and I do everything that I do based on a career in early childhood education, teaching and training early childhood teachers and coaching parents, and the fact that I'm a mom and a grandmother myself. So that's where I come from. Alrighty, so I've got some great questions, and I'm going to dig right in because we've got a lot to talk about. So here's our first question. My newborn baby is 2 weeks old and is spending way too much time feeding, around 1.5 hours or more. Is that normal? I'm getting really tired, and I'm afraid my breast milk may not be enough or not good enough. And so, this is such a common question that new moms have, especially breastfeeding moms, because you can't see how much your baby is taking in. And so let's look at this for, just kind of in parts. First of all, I just want to say congratulations and way to go. That is a long time to hang in there with your baby, and I know that you must be spending half your life nursing your baby if he's nursing an hour and a half at a time. But in these first few weeks of life, it's really important to let your baby set the pace, especially with breastfeeding, because you don't know how much they're getting. And so when the baby lets you know they're hungry and you put them to the breast and they eat, then this creates the supply and demand that is necessary for breastfeeding. Your baby will nurse, and some babies are very efficient nursers and others are less efficient. And so some babies, they can get what they need in 5-10 minutes, and maybe, maybe a little bit longer, but then other babies might need a half an hour. Sounds like your baby needs a little bit more time on each breast to get what they need. And so, so we really do want to follow the cues of the baby and let them set the pace, because what they take, the amount of milk that they drink and the amount that they empty your breast of, that's what your breast will create for their next feeding. And so, sometimes I think babies just really love to breastfeed because it's very cozy and comfortable. And sometimes they're, I think, really just kind of using you as a pacifier. And so you just have to use your own judgment for that and see, like when maybe you think they might be done. But your breast milk production will match your baby's needs, and that's why it's so important to let the baby decide and to set the pace for how much they eat and when they eat. If your diet yourself is healthy, if you're getting the calories that you need, the kind of calories that you need, the amount of fluids that you need, and the rest that you need, then probably you can rest assured that your baby's getting what they need out of your breast milk. If your baby is not gaining weight, then that's a different conversation. And it's recommended that a newborn would gain around 4 to 7 ounces per week. And so that is really how you tell. There are ways of measuring how much a baby's getting by weighing them before you nurse them and weighing them afterwards. But unless your baby's really having trouble gaining weight, I probably wouldn't, think that you need to go to that much trouble to figure it out. Let's see. But I just, want to encourage you in your breastfeeding adventure, and it is an adventure. It takes time to trust the process. You're so concerned. You have this brand new baby, and you just want to make sure everything's good. You want to make sure your baby is getting what they need, and that's what moms do. We worry about that their whole life, and you're just kind of getting the first taste of it with this whole breastfeeding thing. But just encourage you to trust the process, trust your baby to take what they need, trust your body to give your baby what it needs, and try to make your time of nursing a really time of connection with your baby and a time of try to relax a little bit yourself. You can even kind of lay down a little bit sometimes and get it done that way. But the first months are hard. It takes a lot of commitment to make it work. And I just encourage you to hang in there and hang with it. I know it can be a little bit tiring at times. So next question. Why is my baby crying and waking up when I put him to bed after breastfeeding? Well, that's a tough thing because you feel like when you breastfeed your baby that they would just, slumber off to sleep and stay asleep. It's really hard to know why your baby's crying, but here's a couple of things that you might want to look at. First of all, I just want to encourage you to really observe your baby and see what might be going on. We as parents, we just need to observe our children and see what their patterns are and what's going on. Observe your own diet. Are you eating something that maybe is bothering his stomach a little bit? I know that you already know all the recommendations for breastfeeding because you're doing it, but I'll tell you anyways, just so other people might hear it. And that is, you need to avoid caffeine or large amounts of caffeine. I think it's recommended 1 to 2 cups of coffee or 1 to 2 sodas a day if you're nursing. Avoiding processed foods that are real high in sugar that can affect, the quality of just your own diet and your own body's ability to create the milk. Drinking a lot of alcohol will definitely pass through, and so it's recommended 1 alcoholic beverage per day if you're a breastfeeding mom, and that if you do have a drink, you can certainly live without it for this period of time, but if you do want to have a drink, like a glass of wine or a beer or 1 drink, have it after you've fed your baby and you know that they won't be needing to nurse again for a few hours because they need at least 2 hours for that alcohol to run through your system and not come through the breast milk. Some other foods that can be, be a little finicky with your breast milk, garlic, onions, spicy foods, and then sometimes babies are allergic to the proteins in cow's milk or in soy milk. And so by eliminating some of those things from your diet, you might be able to figure out what it is that's causing your baby to become irritable after you nurse. It might just be that they need another burp. It might be that they need to eat some more. So those are just some options, some things to try when you have fed your baby and you put them down and then they cry. Those are just some things to think about considering, looking at breastfeeding. They might just want to be snuggled. They might need to be warm, wrapped up, cuddly, and, swaddled up tight and kind of seen that way too. So, okay, that was our second question. Here's our third one. How do I calm a really nervous baby that's crying too many hours during the day and the night? So this is tough. A crying baby, when you are fatigued and you are tired yourself and sleep deprived, it's a recipe for stress. And so I just want to say, first of all, encourage you to hang in there and to try to get some rest. And I just want to say, I know it's hard. I truly know how hard that is. The reason it's so hard to hear your baby cry is because we are designed to hate the sound of a baby crying, especially a newborn baby. It's here by design because we can't stand to hear that cry, and therefore we're going to take care of that cry and do anything that we can to help that baby not be crying anymore. It hurts our heart, and we don't like to hear it, and so it can be really hard when you have a baby that's crying a lot. But newborns cry. It's just kind of what they do. And it's part of their process of getting used to being in the world. And we, need to kind of go through a checklist of what we need to see and see what's going on to see what we can do to help the crying. So, again, observe your baby. What's causing the fussiness? When are they fussy? Are they fussy at the same time every day? Are there patterns to the crying? It's very common for newborn babies to have a fussy period in the late afternoon, early evening. And sometimes this is, an indicator of colic. Oftentimes, and most of the time, it's not. Most babies are not colicky. Most babies just have a fussy period in the evening. And so when during the day that happens is really helpful to keep track of and to think about what is it that happens prior to that, and what could I do? Is there anything I can adjust on my end to help my baby to not get unhappy during that time? Maybe if you know that your baby typically is going to start really crying and getting fussy at 5 p.m., maybe that's when you go for a walk every day, or maybe take a car ride or something just to kind of break up the pattern a little bit. So another thing to consider is offering a pacifier. You probably are already doing this, and some people are very pro-pacifier and some people are not. It's certainly something to think about and consider as a new parent. Do you want to be married to a pacifier for the next few years, or would you rather not? But the truth is, babies will suck something probably. And in the first couple of weeks, first 4 or 5 weeks of life, they haven't found their hand yet. They haven't made the connection between this is my hand and I can put it in my mouth and suck on it, and that is helpful to me. And so offering a pacifier is often very helpful and will help a baby who is crying, but not crying because they're hungry, just crying because they need to suck. Some other things to try if your baby's really crying a lot: another feeding, another burp, change their diaper, of course. A good swaddle, a good tight swaddle sometimes will really help help soothe your baby. Babies love to rock. That's why we have rocking chairs. But if you can just think about the fact that a newborn is always in motion inside that mom's body, they are always moving. And so it's very comforting for them to be rocked about the same pace that mom's body moves when they walk. And so that's they like a pretty good clip when they rock, on a rocking chair. Slow rocking back and forth, it won't be as effective to help a crying baby as a little bit quicker rock. Another thing is to walk outside. For some reason, that just often helps a baby. It will certainly help your head to walk outside when they're crying, and just to get outside the house. We fostered babies for years, and we only took little tiny babies, and so oftentimes they came to us injured or affected by drugs in some way. And so those little guys, they had a lot of things to heal from and to work through. And so I spent a lot of time in the middle of the night walking outside with crying babies and trying to help them get comforted and soothed in the middle of the night to try to keep my own kids asleep. And then last of all, you can just try to remove as much stimulation as possible. Newborns do need a really unstimulating environment, especially if you're trying to soothe them and trying to get them to sleep. If there's lots of noise, lots of lights, lots of movement, lots of people running around, that can oftentimes be very disconcerting and will make a baby cry. Just getting out away from the crowd is usually very helpful. They just need their mom or their dad. I just want to also mention, when your baby is crying, this is a time for us as the parent or the grown-up who's taking care of the baby to just do some self-talk and to tell yourself that this is not going to last forever. It is going to end. You're doing everything that you can, and be kind and gracious to yourself inside your head, and also kind and gracious to the child. The child is not crying to manipulate you or get on your nerves or anything, even though it might feel that way when they don't stop crying. But that's not what's going on. They are crying because they have a need of some sort. They need to cry. They need you to comfort them. If you do feel like it's just too much, get some help. And if there's no help available, put your baby in a safe place and take a little break. Just step away to the next room, not leave, but just take a break in the next room, take 5-10 minutes, and then go pick up your crying baby again. Okay, let's see. Here's our next question. And if anybody has a question, feel free to put it in the comments. I think I can see questions as they come up here as well. Sometimes it's hard to make my baby fall asleep. He can stay awake for 3 to 4 hours. And so I think this baby that she's referring to is 2 weeks old. And so that's a pretty long time for a 2-week-old to stay awake. 4 hours is a pretty good long stretch. Babies typically will vary in the amount of sleep that they need. But it averages 14 to 17 hours a day for a newborn. And so some babies, babies are people too. Just like you and I are very different in our needs. Some babies need more sleep. Some babies need less sleep. Some are more wakeful than others. Some are a little bit more sleepy. And that just is, part of who they are as a person. That's part of their makeup. And so sometimes a baby will nurse and they fall asleep, and you put them in their crib, and then they wake up an hour later just awake. And you think, well, why wouldn't you sleep longer? It just seems like they might need to sleep longer. But they may not be hungry, they may not be uncomfortable, they just are awake. And so here's the good news. If you have a very wakeful baby who's just awake and happy, guess what? They develop faster because they have more time to see and observe the world around them. They have a lot more brain stimulation. They are watching more things, and oftentimes really smart children are children who don't sleep all that much. And so that's kind of an interesting correlation, I think. But it's certainly something that I have observed over the years, and research does support that. So your awake baby just needs to hang out with you. Whatever it is that you're doing during that period of time, just let them keep you company. Put them in the carrier or the swing nearby, whatever you're doing. If you're in the bathtub, put them in the carrier next to you. If you're in the kitchen, Maybe, put their little infant seat on the counter or on the table and let them be there with you and watch you as you are doing what you do. Talk to them and just, make them part of the conversation. They'll love that. Of course, wearing your baby and giving them lots of interesting things to look at will help during that awake time. But there are things that you can do in your routines and habits that you create with your new baby in these first 4 to 6 weeks of life that will help them get their days and nights right side up. They have no indication of night and day until you help them figure that out. And so it does take about a month or so for that to all get figured out. My daughter just had a baby in May, and I talked to her this week. She told me that she is sleeping, I think she said 4 to 5 hours at night now, which was a really great breakthrough for them because it just gave them a little bit longer stretch of sleep in the evenings. So I have 2 more questions. Here's this next one. Do I really need to wake my baby up to feed them after they've been asleep for a few hours? Sometimes my baby doesn't want to wake up. Can I just let them wake up on their own, or do I need to wake them up to feed them? This is another great question, really, really common question, and it's been debated back and forth for years and years. Whenever our kids were little bitty, we were all talking about the same very thing. Do you wake your baby up to feed them, or do you just let them sleep? And so it depends on something very important, and that's if your baby is gaining weight. If they are not underweight, if they are gaining the weight that they need each week, then letting them go a little bit longer stretch on their sleep is going to be just fine, probably. Ask your doctor. Don't take Ann's advice. But I personally, my own personal experience is I always let the baby lead the way on when they needed to nurse or have a bottle, because I've done it both ways with my foster children and my own children. And so I let them lead the way, let me know when they're hungry, and then I would feed them. If they went a longer stretch, I would just go with that and just let it happen. But that was always, with the understanding that they were gaining the weight that they needed and they were in their normal ranges on weight. Now there's a whole nother school of thought on that. I'm sure that you guys are familiar with it, and that is, to have a schedule and maintain the schedule and wake your baby up to feed them at a certain time. And so it goes both ways. There's lots of people who feel very strongly on both sides of that issue. And here's my observation on that is that in a few years, it doesn't matter. And so it's not something to get too worried about, in my opinion. That's just Ann's opinion. Okay, last question. My baby has 17 wet nappies during 24 hours. Is this normal? Well, that's another really great question, and I love the word nappies because I'm in Houston, Texas, and we say diapers here, so I love the term nappies. I would say that your baby is definitely getting enough to drink. You are seeing a lot of wet diapers, and that is exactly what you want to see. The worry would be is if your baby was not creating wet diapers, if they were not, wetting their diapers enough, that would show that they're not getting enough to drink. 17 is a lot, and so I wonder if you might be able to go a little bit longer in between your diaper changes. Again, you just have to use your judgment and see how wet the diaper is. If it's just barely wet, I personally would wait a little while and let it get good and wet before I change. But that's just me. That's just me and the type of diapers I was using. If they're good and absorbent and taking the fluid, the wet away from the baby's body, you can let the diaper soak that up. But again, it just depends on the kind of diaper you're using. If you're using disposable, 17 a day is a lot to go through. That's very expensive. And so if you're using a diaper that is not absorbent enough to manage, just a tiny little bit of pee, then you might want to look at changing diaper brands. If you're using cloth diapers, that's an awful lot of laundry to do every day. And so you just it's going to be a decision that you'll need to make on your own as the parents of that baby and decide what you need. But as far as diaper changing goes, you would never ever let a baby sit in a poopy diaper. You always want to get those off as quick as you can and get them cleaned up. And then I do think it's a good idea, if you can, to let your baby kind of air out between diaper changes. It just really helps to get them good and dry. You take the wet or dirty diaper off, you wipe them clean with a wipe or a wet cloth, and then just, if you can just let them lay there without a diaper on for a little bit, and maybe even fan them with another diaper and just kind of give it a little bit of air before you put the next diaper on. I think that's really helpful in avoiding rash and other problems, because it can, some babies are very prone to diaper rash. So that's a good reason to change that often. But again, it's just something that you have to kind of make your best judgment on as the mom or the dad that's taking care of that baby. So I hope that answers your question. 17 is a lot for one 24-hour period. So that is all my questions that I have that were given to me in advance. And I just want to wrap it up by saying that I think it's, I just want to reiterate this whole idea of observing your child and responding to the needs that they are communicating. As we are in COVID and stuff, I've been thinking about, what would it be like if I got COVID and I was terribly sick and my husband was terribly sick. We live, here alone. What would it be like if we were really sick and somebody came in and was taking care of us but wasn't looking at what we needed? They were just doing what they thought we needed. In a sense, that's what it would be like if you are not being observant of your child's needs and you're just doing what you think. And so learning to read your baby and watch what they do, let them show you what they need when they're sleepy. How do you know a newborn is sleepy? Well, they fall asleep, but what do they do before they fall asleep? Do they lie very still? Do they stare off in a distance? Do they make little faces? Do they rub their eyes? All of these things will give you hints as to when they need to go to sleep, and then you can help get them to sleep. Some other things that you might be looking for is, before your baby cries when they're hungry, they give you some other cues as well. They might start to, kind of root a little bit, or they might open their mouth, or they might put their fingers in their mouth. Those would be some cues that your baby is hungry. And so those are just two things that you can watch for to be able to read your baby and best respond to them and to take care of their needs. So learning to be an intentional parent when you have a newborn, it takes time. And it takes practice and it takes experience. And so I just want to encourage you, if you have a newborn at home, to really soak it in and soak in that baby and learn all that you can from them, and learn all that you can about yourself and your responses to them in this period of time, because it's a very beautiful time. Again, we've got the Quick Start Guide for newborns. If you are expecting a new baby, today's the last day to get it at this price. And so I hope that you'll take a look at that if that's something that would be helpful for you. So that's it for today. Thanks for joining me, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye.